What's up guys, Fury here. Welcome back to the channel. So I was thinking to myself for a little bit, maybe it would be a good idea to start a series just covering the characters with their new loadouts, especially since we have the new elite skills thanks to old campus exploration. So I think that's what I'm going to be doing going forward, just covering the characters based off of the English tier list, going with that. So let's get started.
I wanna be immortal, like a god in the sky. I wanna be a silk flower.
So, here we have Nephilim, the top of the line, top tier character that we'll find in most teams when fighting in league, player versus player matches, and some of the tougher test floors. But what exactly goes into building a Nephilim that is effective in player versus player and in player versus environment? So let's take a look here. I have one built L5 Nephilim. As you can see, she's oafed and has a speed skin, but with the base look, see if we can just bring this up. Most of them we fielded looking like this. So a decent amount of HP, but what's important with her is her speed being as high as possible, especially when being able to drop her equilibrium marks, which we'll talk about, and just setting off a whole bunch of chain reaction of damage that would affect everyone on the enemy team. So let's look over her abilities real quick. It's the ultimate extermination on her active, which does target 4 enemies when it goes off. Deals some damage, but let's face it, Nephilim's damage on itself, based off her attack, it's always going to be kind of low, so we don't really want to expect damage coming from here. But what's important is these equilibrium marks that she tags. They last for 3 rounds, and as described here, does 25% of damage from the girl that's wearing the equilibrium marks on the enemy team, based off of their maximum health points. So it is capped at 3000% of Nephilim's attack, but we hardly reached that ever. Being a mark, this can bypass shields, such as the L5 Unbending Will or the Burning Blade shields, because those do not stop damage from marks. This will also bypass damage reduction because it's HP based. And this is very powerful, especially when being able to keep your opponent's characters on their teams marked. It's going to do a ton of damage, especially when they're unleashing their own actives. That is the condition for the damage, is that while the mark is on the enemy has to use their active to take the damage. Now the mark won't disappear after they use it, it'll just remain there until it is removed either by baptism, gear, or even Vivian.
問答無用。カオス殲滅。
So here is her second ability. It is her first static passive. These are the buffs that the character will give herself. Gains the 40% HP, 80% holy damage, and 35% damage reduction. But what's very important here is that speed. Looking at her base, it's going to end up coming to 1198. Which is insanely fast compared to other characters. It is a little slower by terms that we were expecting from another game, but it's fast enough to do its job, keep her going at the start of rounds, and dropping her equilibrium marks before most other girls get to use their own abilities. So let's move on. Her second passive, this will be her basic attack. It's single target against an enemy character, but will do a nice amount of damage, 100% of attack, and then 20% of the target's max HP. So again, this can't really be saved by damage reduction, but it can be stopped by other shields. It is limited to 1500% of her attack, and she'll heal herself 24% of the damage that she's kind of going to be a little bit, but it's always helpful. And now finally, this Embrace of Darkness, third passive ability, is triggered at the end of the round. Will cost 300% of an enemy girl's attack total. So this is going to affect their entire team, do the damage, and now this is based off of attack, so it can bounce off Unbending Will, it can bounce off Burning Blades. But there isn't really a real way to boost the damage done. So holy damage wouldn't really affect this. Armor break. This just hits all enemies. Quite fantastic. Very tanky. You can see here how she's built up a little bit. Her damage reduction up to 38%. In a Chaos Aura, she'll gain extra bonuses if you have her wearing a black hat or another antique such as Invisible Cloak, which is very recommended. This will be much higher. The damage reduction cap is limited up to 70%. Alright, so let's look at some of her gear. Mage set is always going to be a welcomed addition for her. For the crystals, it all depends on what you're using. Speed, HP will be the best go for when using her in player versus player for your teams in league. Heal received in HP is a wonderful tech to use specifically for patrol, house exams, tests, but you can also use HP. I'll just make her hit points pool significantly higher. But the heal received is nice because you'll take the damage and then be able to heal almost back up to full with all the healing that's going on in your team. And it just depends on how it's built. This is just what works for me in my case. And then for player versus player, this Nephilim I have using Fate Crystal. Bit of a whale tech, but HP and energy is fantastic for her, and the attack, if she hits her cap, just increases it flatly. Okay. Potentials. These can vary a lot, but in player versus player, we always want to have extra speed. And since this one is a nice little balance of the speed and the HP that it provides, it's always going to be a solid pick for having your Nephilim going as fast as possible, as fast as you would like her. If you want to tier it out and have some extra HP, then that'll be up to you. Get into the big strategy play. This healing is also very nice. It increases her own healing by 15%. Fantastic in player versus environment as well. With that HP healing crystal, she's now healing an extra 15% on top of that. Baptism will always be one of the most useful abilities to have on any of your characters, just for getting rid of those enemy marks, CC status effects, any type of burn damage, or damage over time marks. Always going to be recommended. Fourth one, again, we have speed here. Then this shield potential is just incredible. 4 taps or 4 instances of damage will be prevented unless they are damage from marks. And this is quite nice to have, especially when you're trying to keep her on the field as long as possible. Your opponents may get her down to lethal range, and then she'll just proc these shields survive to the end of the round, heal herself all the way back up. Just an incredible piece of tech, especially for being rewarded all of the resources you've put into your character to get her to L5. Just incredible. Alright, so next I wanted to talk about the elite skills. Now these are a recent addition to the game and they're fantastic techs for a lot of characters, but you have to be a little careful because some of these can be traps. So, here we have the active and the 3 passive. These can vary a little bit, but the ones you would always want to look forward to is the first active, Ultimate Extermination, and her 4th passive, Embrace of Darkness. These are the ones that are the most worth to upgrade on her kit. You can ignore the basic, and you can consider the second passive just because it'll add more HP to her hit points and holy damage, but that's not really something I'm going to be looking for. Nephilim, she's not really doing damage off of her own attacks, marks, and passive. So the first active here will upgrade her equilibrium damage from 25% here to 27.5. While 2.5% may seem low, could be the extra push to defeating a girl on the enemy team that was near that threshold. She only had 20% of her HP. This would be enough to just defeat her through her unbending will shields, for example. And then on this 4th passive, this would increase the damage that Nephilim forces the enemy girls to take based off their own attack from 300% all the way up to 330%, which could also be massive. And so this is what I was referring to earlier. It also would reduce their own healing by 12%, which stays the same. And then heal herself for an extra 17. Like stealing their HP. These are wonderful things to look forward to when building your Nephilim. So here we had this one with the Fate Crystal. I have another one over here that is sporting the Eternal Dawn, which could be an interesting world tech. But there are antiques that you can use as free to play or low spending player. It was offered in one of the events, and I'm looking forward to it when they offer it again. So in this case, say for example, I wanted to set this one up for damage reduction. I want to buy that now. With my regular 6-star free mage gear, I have it split, so she'll have a higher amount of HP. It's almost reaching the 9 million here. Let's have her try Invisible Cloak. The reason why Invisible Cloak is very nice is because it's built for angels and you can acquire it in the antique shop. The antique shop was also a recent addition and it's very nice for being able to pick and choose which antique you want. And I think I'll add that to the series of videos, just going through which antique from that shop is the best for a character that you may be working on. And those will be more or less easier to acquire compared to needing to complete an event, spend money on an antique. But this is just a nice, very flexible antique that you can use in both player versus player or player versus environment, all sorts of PvE mode. Just for that extra holy damage for her actual attacks. And then this damage reduction on HP, which are always going to be great stats for her. The weakness with Nephilim, though, is her very low DC immunity. It's almost impossible to get this up on her. Maybe running an umbrella, maybe running one of her skins, which offers a little bit of DC immunity, but you're never going to see this number very high. And even then, umbrella isn't really recommended. It won't give her more HP. and damage reduction isn't something that's helping Nephilim stay alive in a lot of the endgame matchups, because of other Nephilims being able to bypass damage reduction itself. So it's always something to look forward to, and yeah, her speed has to be able to keep her ahead of enemies' CC abilities. Being able to stun her, petrify her, freeze her. She's very susceptible to that, and that is her major weakness. So keeping her on top of other enemy utility girls or stunning girls is going to be very crucial. Speed, HP for her crystal. Can even consider running the new Deception Antique on her, but there's still going to be a lot of testing that needs to be done with that, especially with the upcoming releases. Of course, if you have any further questions on what else Nephilim can do for you, or any questions on how you can continue to work on improving your own Nephilim, you can drop that down in the comments, and I'll definitely read over them, look over and see how I can assist with any extra steps to improve your Nephilim or any other girls on your team. This is a nice little topic for now, and don't forget to also increase the intimacy. Wanted to add that extra note. There's an extra 2.5 HP, 3% if you give her the oath ring, which I did on this one. Alright, so of course, any questions, just feel free to drop them down in the comments. I'm going to be looking to stream some of the upcoming capsule events if this video is going up by then. Of course, any questions, just leave them in the comments. Catch you guys later. Thanks.
I wanna be immortal, like a god in the sky. I wanna be a silk flower, like I'm never gonna die. I wanna live forever, forever in your heart. And we'll always be together, from the end to the start.